This video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I get a lot of downloads and activations while I drive, and I haven't done a car video in a while, so I thought I'd pop on and kind of share some energy updates with you guys in case you're interested. Some light language might come through as well, but I'm laughing because I did a video in my car yesterday just for myself, and I'm seeing all of the same synchronicities, many of the same synchronicities kind of come through today, which is always a good reminder that, yes, it's like all of the universe kind of saying, pay attention. So what I was shown is that we've got this huge separation, this huge split going on, right? And I'm sure many of you have seen this and felt it as well. There's a split, and I could go into so many different layers, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. If you picture the left and right hemispheres of the brain, we'll start with the physical. There's the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere. We've got our logical, analytical versus our emotional and feeling, creative aspect. And this split down the hemisphere really creates an imbalance. We're either in the left hemisphere or we're in the right hemisphere. And I was shown that this is a symbol happening not only in our bodies physically, but it's happening in polarity, in density, separation of densities, polarization, left, right. If we think of not just left, right brain, but let's think of politics right now. Let's think of religion, either really into, so there's so many different polarizations we could say that are being expressed. What's happening is this split that I'm being shown is actually creating somehow unification. So what's happening is our left and hemispheres of our brain, our whole cranium essentially are going through upgrades from my perspective. Okay, I know some of us are probably like, great, my brain could use an upgrade. That's what I like to think. But I feel this huge shift in my combination of my left and right hemispheres of my brain. I feel like this is merging, yet a month ago or so, there was a huge shift. I was very analytical and trying to pull that into my creativity, or I'd be really creative and I'd be struggling on analyzing the creative aspect. And so I would just roll with it and just kind of allow it to flow. I was shown literally this morning a liquid skull on the back of a truck as I was driving. And yesterday I was shown a skull with an electrical lightning bolt down the center. So if we think of water holds information, okay? And electricity or light also holds information. And we're being blasted sometimes with this energy, this light frequency, this information, and it can feel like that's coming into our skull and coming into our awareness. And what's happening is the crystals that are in our body, in our brain, in our plasma, if you think of a crystalline plasma network, is essentially coming online. It's remembering things. We're having activations. We're having realizations. We're having a lot of aha moments, which then essentially zaps us. We have this zap, some of us quite literally. We can feel it in our physical body, and it can create this connection into linking up. This is why I did this. I remember this timeline, and now I'm leaving that behind me, but I'm taking with me. So I'm stepping out of my past timelines, but I'm taking with me what I've learned from it. So this great divide of who I was, I am now integrating, bringing what I can use, the usable information that is stored in this ridge or gap, or the gray matter within the brain that was perhaps inaccessible before, for example. And I'm going to go all over. I'm going to talk politics, physics, body. It's all connected. It's all a representation of this energy. So what happens is I'm going to take that with me in this now moment and expand into it. So it's all of this usable information that's essentially been stored in this space that is now accessing. So what I was shown, if you picture this creative void, okay, this creative space, and you picture picture the Grand Canyon. And on either side of the Grand Canyon, you have one side, you have the other side. And in the middle, you have a great divide. But that great divide wasn't always there. At one time, it was unified, okay? And as rain came and earthquakes came and as mountains rose, right, things expanded, cracked, and came apart. Erosion happened. Water pulled all of these nutrients through the canyon, right? And then you have this split, and it comes to a point where this side of the canyon is very, very far polarized from the other side of the canyon. And so if you guys are following me, you can see that this is what we're seeing in our political, social, economic structures, right? I'm using the Grand Canyon as an example because this is what my guides are calling the grand rising. It's the golden rising. It's the grand rising. And so what happens is there's been this rigid, and we'll call it a ridge, R-I-D-G-E, rigid ride. Okay. So what I'm seeing is it's a split. And what's happened is things have been so rigid in belief structures that it has created this rigidity that now that things are starting to fall apart, the foundation has fallen apart under what was holding these rigid structures, beliefs, fill in the blanks, whatever belief that is starting to crumble. And there are many belief structures that are crumbling, many parts of our reality that was perhaps valid in an old matrix, or we could call it in a 3D reality dimension. We could call it in a past timeline. It did hold truth, but now we are in a completely different space to where it no longer holds true. And we have to be liquid in our, I'm hearing acceptance in when we come into this space. And if we're not, those cracks then create this imbalance and things fall apart. Things fall into the cracks and seem like they're lost. We lose things in the shuffle. This has been going on for a long time. But what I'm being shown is this split that's happening. This is also universe split, almost as if, from what I'm being shown, there's this new void that has literally come up from space, we'll call it. And within this void, if you picture the brain and all of the curves and the gray matter in the brain, what happened if the brain were to expand and all of a sudden those crevices would become flat? Does that make sense? Maybe. Or what happened if the crevice of the Grand Canyon rose up and then it created a bridge between the two canyons? So this is all metaphorical, but what I'm seeing is as a truth. So what's happening is all of this stuff that was in these crevices holds information. It actually holds value. So if we were rigid before, we were covering things up, and underneath, so now the cracks are, all this stuff is bubbling up. We can actually use what's being brought to the surface as fuel, as food, as energy, as a source of information that can be utilized for our growth. There are some people who are so far polarized or on the other side of the canyon that they're not able to access, from their perspective, this information, so to speak. So there are a group of people who will not see it, feel it, or access it from one perspective. Everybody's being affected by this, but they may not understand, they may not decide, they may decide to stay on that side of the canyon. There are other groups of us that are going through the shifts. We're experiencing the bubbles. We're experiencing the cracks. We're in it. And that allows us to create a bridge from our experience of the left and right hemispheres of the brain of this Grand Canyon. And we are creating this bridge, we could say, between shadow and light. And we are essentially in the process of integrating this information and utilizing it and essentially transmuting it, however, whatever words or meanings we want to assign to what we're experiencing. And there's another group of us that are just holding space. Maybe we've done both of those things before, or maybe we aren't done experiencing all of the cracks that are in our facade or in our reality, that are in our structure. We're in the process of learning liquidity in this morphogenic field, because everything is morphing. Everything is constantly flowing and moving, and we might be in that process of having one foot on one side, one foot on the other, while this quaking, so to speak, happens. So then there's the other group of us that are again, we're holding space, and we're just saying, look, while I hold this space and I hold this field, I am then creating a bridge. I am creating a bridge to and for my brothers and sisters who might need a little help. I am creating a bridge to those who may never see what it is that I see, yet that bridge is always available to them, because it could take one shift of perspective to bridge that gap. But I'm also creating a bridge of unification in my own structure, in my own reality. And we could see this as the rainbow bridge. We could see this as Kundalini. We could see this as the chakra stability and opening and expansiveness. We could see this, the bridge to the plasma structure of, think of a crystal lattice that we're connecting into. So I'm just giving that as like 3 examples of where people might be right now. And this can change. Sometimes we oscillate back and forth. What I've been shown a lot of in addition to this is this reference to this split, this double. I'm seeing double. I'm hearing that the inverted matrix has flipped. Some people are coming up from the bottom, and some people are coming down from the clouds, so to speak, and coming into that centered space of anchoring these frequencies that are being remembered, brought up through this crack or ridge that holds all of this valuable information. And as we hold space and we create this balanced, somewhat balanced feeling in the morphogenetic field, it allows us to anchor these frequencies in our own way, in our own harmonic. And what I'm being kind of shown is that this allows those that are really struggling right now just to feel into our field. What would it feel like if they could be balanced? What could it feel like if they could see past this green screen that's falling apart all around us, right? And I talked about this in one of my previous videos. So as we do this, this is the grand rising. This is the ability. This is a key ingredient for this, sorry, I'm going to stop for a moment. For this expansion, right? The mountain is rising, so to speak. And it's, as a mountain rises, all of the nutrients that the deluge has brought in is then accessible, can then be seen. All of the things that were hidden in the cracks, as the cracks widen, bubble up to the surface and carries with it nutrients, right? And that's what's happening. Again, some of the stuff that comes up from the surface may not seem like it carries any information or nutrients, but it does. And the more of us that are able to access this void, are able to access this space that holds all of this valuable nutrients and holds space for the space, the more this has this ripple effect out into the field. What I was shown is as this cracks and pulls apart, it's going to feel like this stretching, right? This pulling. So if you think of an elastic person being pulled, the more elastic and liquid we can be, the easier, once that crack exposes all of this, we can kind of mold back in together. So in essence, this crack, this void will in the long run create unity and oneness. So what's happening is some of us, what we're seeing is, because we're able to see on the other side of the canyon, one side can't see it, but the other side can. And I'm not trying to be linear here and say one side is better than the other. It's a different experience. It's just a different experience that we're choosing to experience, to feel, to be part of. So let's say we are the side, and this again isn't good or bad, wrong or right. We are able to see all of that. We can see the void. We can see the people that are polarized and completely unable to see beyond the canyon the side of the canyon they're existing on. We can see our own space, and we can recognize that everything is connected. This, in essence, I was shown that 144 has doubled quite a few times yesterday. So we know about the 144,000. Many of us have heard that. I see this as a morphogenetic, as something that has literally grown exponentially. It's not necessarily just a numbers thing. It's a vibration. It's a harmonization. It's a bigger symphonic resonance, because those of us, and it's not just us that are holding space and staying in that neutrality. It's also those that are experiencing just shadow. It's also those that are experiencing both sides, that are kind of stuck in the crack right now. We are moving up the mountain. We are expanding the mountain out, whether we realize it or not. This is happening on such a mass, grand scale that it has completely shifted our reality structure. So this double, it's a double. So it's 1 into 2. That's what I was shown. The information bubbles up, is revealed, is felt, is exposed. We expand, and then it contracts and melds and molds together and comes back into unity and oneness. So us being able to see and feel this polarization can actually help us to digest the digestible information for fuel and energy. And it helps us to see how far we've come, to see what it is that works for us and what doesn't work for us. Helps us to see where other people are at in their evolutionary ascension, expansion journey. And the more we can come from a place of acceptance and liquidity in this morphogenetic field that is morphing and changing, the more powerful in that essence we become as a unit, even though it seems like we're just being pulled apart right now. All of the crap that's coming up is really meant to be dissolved, integrated, digested, and utilized for fuel. And if we can hold space for ourselves and our brothers and sisters, this doubles our numbers, is what I'm being shown. So it's not 144, it's 288,000. It's almost as if we have come into, and if you think of a dimension, it's a higher dimension. It's less density, we could say. It's genetics, our genes, our DNA are actually increasing. We'll say double strand is doubled, if that makes sense. This is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing many people have accessed this higher genealogy. They have morphed into this space, and this will assist others in being able to either double up. We can double up is what I was shown, or double down. So either way you slice it, if you double up, if you're thinking of blackjack, or you double down, from my perspective, it increases your chances. So there's still this increase of value, no matter how you slice it, even though it doesn't appear that way if we're looking at it from one side of the canyon. And this is a very linear representation of what I wanted to show, what I wanted to say about what I'm being shown. This increases our ability to access these fields that were inaccessible to us before. And if we think of all the stuff, let's say, that was within this ridge, that was in the gray matter of the brain, that was in the crystals within the bones, that was within this void in creative space, this holding of all this information, I was also shown that a lot of information that's been held in the earth is now accessible. And this can be felt rippling through all of our energy fields. I also saw the sun yesterday, that was interesting. I was seeing two suns even. So but what I'm being shown is there is this separation of everything. Double, double, double. Double up, double down. And then it comes back together in that trimergence is what I was told. So it's a trimergence. And that's all I'm going to share right now. There's a lot more. What does this mean for us? It just means that no matter where we're at, ascension's happening, expansion's happening. It's part of, we are in a completely different place than we were a year ago, than we were 6 months ago. I'm in a completely different place than I was a week ago. I don't know about you guys. It changes constantly. Time is different. I was also shown this, that's a whole other video. So I guess I never got back to Atlantis, right? I was shown a spiral of time, or if you've ever looked up 3 hairs, HARES, with the rabbits and their ears are all connected together. It's in a lot of ancient symbols. It's a strange loop, I believe is the right word for it. Right? So I won't go into too much detail, but essentially there's also this time connection. So if we've got these spirals of time, okay, yet it's infinite, right? I guess we could do it this way. It's infinite. There are certain periods of time, let's say that information was stored within these periods of time, and it was embedded in our bodies. It was embedded in the earth, literally. I talked about this in a previous video, catastrophic events occurred. in previous timelines, or you could say even future timelines. And a lot of those events created stuck energy. And this is a really simplified perspective from my own perspective. And as this pull happens and this separation happens, okay, all this stuff comes up. So it looks like this. Expands, 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 and is absorbed back into, integrated into, dissolved into, morphed into, moved out of, digested. So many people are triggered by this because of perhaps unresolved trauma. This can be from another timeline that overlapped in this lifetime. It can be attached to a timeline that's coming in from Atlantis, okay? And we're healing this by allowing and holding space for us to integrate these emotions, energies, feelings, memories, expressions, creations. And that's kind of what I'm seeing in a nutshell. So we're in that particular loop right now from one perspective. We've also, in doing that, are making corrections to certain imbalances that were embedded when this happened. Not just one event. It's not just Atlantis. Sometimes we have a tendency to get stuck, like everything I'm talking about, rigid in our belief. And once we allow this to flow, morphing come up to be revealed and exposed and felt and remembered that we didn't even know perhaps existed. One of those has to do with the Platonic solids. A lot of things that we believed in physics, quantum theory, quantum computing is no more. And from my perspective, and I say that as a play on words, KNOW, no more now. So because all of this has come up, we know more now. We know what we don't want to do, what we did do. We know that what we can do to combine those two. We know more inner to outer. And this reflects in our field, in our reality, in our relationships, in our science, in our politics. And I want to just touch briefly on the political aspect. That is the past. What we are seeing playing out from my perspective on the green screen, I'm going to call it. Even though it's now, it's attached to timelines that have already been played out. We're just hearing the echo from it. We're seeing the echo. And that's something that's hard to kind of wrap our brains around. Sometimes it's easier for me to understand than others. But essentially, all of this information that is advancing us scientifically, that is helping us come back together, has already happened. We just aren't seeing it yet because we're in this cracking process. The egg is cracked, the yolk is coming out, the nutrients are rising, the star seeds, light workers, human beings are encompassing, right, the compass, all four directions, inner to outer, outer to inner, left to right, up and down, side to side, balancing all this out, stabilizing this field through a liquidity, through a morphogenic energy that essentially is assisting all of the cracks, the old stuff to dissolve and fall away, be absorbed, reabsorption in a positive way. And this takes, from a linear perspective, time to see but we're feeling it now because time is only a construct from one perspective. And if all of the stuff that's coming up is from a higher dimension, because it's from the past or from the future, but it's also coming up from a lower dimension. I'm just using dimension as a frame of reference. That holds energy attached to all kinds of different timelines. If you picture a crystal lattice spinning, it's connected to everything. So this means moving from, again, I use dimensions because it's such an easy way to kind of think about things, 3D to 4D. All of the stuff that was true in the 3D is not applicable in the same way in the fourth dimension, in the fifth dimension, from my perspective. We may have had it as a foundation or a base, but it doesn't exist in 4D. Therefore, if we're seeing it play out, it's only a shadow. I mean, like an echo, like, hello, 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 hello. Like when a star dies, right? We see the light from what we've been told, but it was a long time ago that happened. And this is another thing that I'm being shown. So for example, Atlantis happening, all of the things that happened, trauma in Atlantis and other cataclysmic events that rippled out from that in different timeline imbalances, we'll say, are now, because we're accessing this void, allows us to make corrections to that. And this is another video, I think, entirely, but essentially we're changing the past, which is really cool. And I don't know exactly all the details to describe what I'm seeing, but we're changing all of that. Therefore, what we're seeing could change at any moment in our reality structure because it's a ripple effect, and it goes out to the past, it goes out to the future, it goes out to the parallel dimensions and parallel existences. And so everything is affected. It's really, really, really cool. It doesn't look that way, but again, we're being invited to hold space and recognize that time and space are separate, yet they're not. I'm hearing just times are changing, literally. So if the platonic solids, for example, and how we thought they existed, because they don't act the same way in a fourth dimension as they did in a third dimension. Does that make sense? Therefore, nothing does, including our reality. So again, if you haven't watched the movie The Matrix, it'd be a good opportunity to kind of see what I'm talking about. So in love and light, guys, I know that was kind of out there, but that's what I'm seeing. And I'll share some more videos next. So stay in the heart, hold space, right? A lot of people are feeling this. It's wonky. No matter what happens and what the outcome is what we're seeing play out on the